It's the 19th century. The Russian Empire is in control of the Caucasus region. The Russians had, at this point, understood that their economy needed improvement and that their empire was too big for horse-drawn carriages. To catch up with the rest of the industrializing world, people needed to move. Georgian agriculture and Azerbaijani oil needed to move. The Caucasus required a modern and efficient transportation method, and luckily for them, Britain had just come up with one. Construction of railways in Georgia started in 1865, and in 1871 operations began between Poti and Quirila, which is now Zestaponi. On 10th of October 1872, the first train arrived from Poti to Tbilisi. The railway at this point was already traversing one of, if not the most difficult sections in the country, the Surami Pass, or as it's more widely known, the Rikoti Pass, where the maximum incline was 4.5%, which, if you don't know, is a lot. This section will come up later. In 1877, the railway branched off the main line for the first time, extending from Rioni station to Kutaisi. 1883 brought the second phase of the construction, with the lines to Baku and Batumi opening. The Caspian and Black Seas were connected at last, and oil started being exported in large quantities. In 1888, the Kutaisi line was extended up to Tribuli. In 1889, Tbilisi-Gyumri-Kars line was built and connected Russia with the Ottoman Empire via railway. We now go back to the Rikoti Pass, where on the 16th of September 1890, construction of the double-tracked Tsipa railway tunnel finished. This made the route have less overall incline and made it less dangerous. The 4-kilometer-long tunnel was also one of the unique structures in the world at that time. 1894 saw the railway be extended to Borjomi. In 1895, the Shorab-Anisachkhere narrow gauge railway opened to transport manganese and other materials. Because of the desire of the local Romanov family nobility, construction of the Borjomi-Bakuriani narrow gauge railway began in 1897. The terrain proved to be a challenge, and one Gustav Eiffel was commissioned to build a bridge over the river Tsemistsali. The structure was delivered from France to Georgia and assembled on spot. The railway finally opened in 1902 and later became known colloquially as the Kukushka, or Little Cuckoo. In 1915, the railway lines to Tel Aviv and Tznori were opened. The construction of the line was financed by local nobility and the Nobility Bank. In 1918, Georgia, Armenia and Azerbaijan gained independence from the Russian Empire, first as the Transcaucasian Republic for the grand total of 1 month, and then as separate countries. During the Democratic Republic, no new railway lines were built. Yup, that's the whole section. 1921 saw the Georgian Democratic Republic annexed by the USSR, and the industrialization policies of the communists were about to make a lot of difference for the railway. In 1924, lines from Borjomi to Borjomi Park, Tribuli 1 to Tribuli 2, and Ozurgeti to Natanebi were built. The line from Senaki to Gali opened in 1930. On August 16, 1932, for the first time in the USSR, an electric locomotive, a Class S for Surami, set off on the Surami Pass. General Electric Company produced the first batch, with the rest of the SS class being built by the Kolomna and Dynamo Works between 1932 and 34. Next came the line from Brotseula to Tsaltubo with a branch line to Gumbra in 1935, Gali to Sokhumi in 1938, Gori to Tskhinvali and Ochamchir to Tqarcheli in 1940. In 1941, the Second World War reached the Soviet doorstep and the railway gained strategic value. Borjomi Park to Akhaltsikhe line opened in 1944. The Sachkhere narrow gauge railway got relayed into the Russian gauge, and the date for this I cannot find at all, so I'm just telling you here. The construction of the Sokhumi to Adler line began during World War II and ended in 1949. This finally connected the Georgian railway network directly with the Russian one. From 1946 through 49, the railways implemented new signaling and switch systems all over the network. 1957 was an important year in Georgian locomotive manufacturing, as the Tbilisi Locomotive Repair Works was transformed into the Tbilisi Electric Locomotive Building Plant. The factory would go on to make a significant number of locomotives for the USSR alongside with the Novocherkassk plant, but more on that in a later video. Maybe. In 1962, the Tvarcheli line was extended up to Akarmara, and in 1965, the Zugdidi line was extended to Jvari to aid the construction of the Enguri HPP. By 1969, the entire Georgian railway network had been electrified. The railway reached Akhalkalaki in 1986. During the late 1980s, the Caucasus Pass railway project started being constructed. It was to connect Tbilisi with Vladikavkaz in the Russian Autonomous Republic of Chechnya. Many versions of the route were drawn up, with engineers settling on having the railway pass through Pshavi and Khevsureti. Wikipedia says the number of artificial structures planned for the project exceeded 3,700, but I can't find a source. What we do know is that a staggering 23.5-kilometer long railway tunnel was to be constructed, slicing through the rough Caucasian mountain range. The tunnel, if constructed, would be the longest railway tunnel in Europe at the time. The chief engineer of the project was Nikolos Swanishvili, whom you see on the screen now. If you know Russian, there's a link in the description to the original video so you can go and watch it. Little stretches of the railway were built. I even remember seeing a few tunnels on my trip to Khevsureti. However, the people weren't too satisfied with the project. The 1980s are a period of glasnosti perestroika, which allowed people to more freely voice their concerns and protests. After the 1986 Chernobyl accident, more and more scientists as well as other people in academic circles started speaking out against the construction of the railway. This was the first organized infrastructure-related movement in Georgian history. They argued that the railway would negatively affect the nature in the region as well as the Pshav-Khevsurian culture and their ethnographical landmarks. They also worried about the contamination of the drinking water supply for Tbilisi, as it's the Aragvi River which fills this role. Protests continued even after the decision to freeze the project and cut funding was made by the government in 1988. There's a small book in Georgian about this resistance, and a lot of images, as you can see, I have grabbed from there. It's available free of charge online, and of course the link is in the description. The Soviet Union was slowly losing grip on Georgia, and no new railway lines were constructed through 1991. After the war in Abkhazia in 1993, Georgian Railway ceased its operations on the territory of the region. In addition to this, the railway bridge over the Enguri River was blown up multiple times by separatists, completely cutting off Abkhazia from the rest of the network. The remaining lines are operated by the so-called Abkhazian Railway, with international trains to and from Russia being operated by the Russian Railway. Up to 2004, the railway, as well as the whole country, was ridiculed with corruption. The new government therefore decided to modernize the company. This included laying off 2,400 employees and subsequently increasing the pay of others by 17%, lowering freight tariffs and starting to modernize the rolling stock. After the Russo-Georgian War in 2008, the railway lost control of its station in Tskhinvali. The section from Nicosia was sold off as scrap metal. Around 2009, the government came up with the idea of the Tbilisi Bypass Railway. An idiotic idea! A new line would be constructed from the north of the town to the south, bypassing Tbilisi Central. Said station would close and the passenger traffic from the north and south would be split between Didube and Navtluri respectively. The land that would be freed up in the city centre would have been redeveloped. This project, however, was frozen, which means that nothing is happening. Tunnels and bridges were built and can be seen today. In my mind, it was a stupid idea in the first place because you need a central station in your city to make transferring easy, and Didube and Navtluri suck in general. In addition, the entirety of the overground and underground transport system is centered around Tbilisi Central. In 2010, Tbilisi, Kobuleti and Makhinjauri received new station buildings. If you looked at Tbilisi, however, you wouldn't think that way. In the Soviet times, trains to Batumi ran on the street to reach the city center. This line had been abandoned and a new station was built on the outskirts of the city. Another big infrastructure project was announced in 2011, with the railway modernization project being initiated. The project includes new tunnels and bridges on the, drumroll please, Rikoti Pass. The route is to be diverted from the old Tsipa tunnel to the new 8.3 km long railway tunnel from Quixreti to Zoare. Tunnels have been built in other places to straighten out the route in general. The project was to be completed in 2019. Anyone who can read a calendar can do so right now and take a guess whether it's completed or not. One of the problems that arose is the aforementioned 8.3 km long tunnel, designated the T9. The soil of the mountains through which it is supposed to pass is highly unstable. The Lichi range in general has really unstable soil, and the tunnelers kept having to rebuild the tunnel because cracks kept forming on the walls. I must mention here that this information comes from sources in Quixreti itself and not officials, so I would advise you to take it with a tiny grain of salt. Although, as far as I'm told, there is geological research that was carried out by the Soviets which deemed the soil unsuitable. Again, unfortunately, I can't back this claim up, but I'm gonna leave it here. There has been speculation that it will open this year with the entirety of the new highway on the same route, and I really hope that's the case. When and if the new section ever opens, the travelling time between Tbilisi and the west is gonna get cut by 40 minutes from 5 hours and 20 minutes to 4 hours and 40 minutes. This is still a lot, but at least it's something. In addition to this, the total capacity of the railway is going to increase as well. I do wonder, however, what they are going to do with the old section. I really hope they aren't going to close it down. Due to the border between Armenia and Turkey closing in 1993, a new railway line was needed to reconnect Baku and Tbilisi to Kars. This came through as the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway project in 2007, which included building a new station outside Akhalkalaki, equipped with facilities to change the gauge of carriages from Russian to standard gauge. With this, the only section of standard gauge track in Georgia was constructed. The project was set to be completed in 2010, then by 2013, then by 2015, and it officially opened on the 30th of October 2017. The railway carried through normally until 2020. Due to the, how should I say this, global health emergency, the railway was forced to shut down its services. After the lockdown ended in Georgia, the services were resumed while complying with guidelines. One small exception to this was, and still is, the Borjomi-Bakuriani railway. The railway says that the line needs rebuilding to ensure safety and improve service, but have they done anything about it? God knows! The officials say that the money needed to fund the refurbishment cannot be found. The railway was a way for locals and tourists alike to get around the valley, and yes, it was extremely slow, taking 2.5 hours for a one-way trip, but it was used. It is officially part of the cultural heritage of Georgia, and the fact that it hasn't reopened yet is extremely disappointing. Aside from this, a sizable part of the network is disused. The line from Gori to Nikosi was shut down and trains only go as far as Gori freight station. The Tznori railway was closed with the tracks and catenary being sold off. The Jwari line was abandoned and so was the Gumbra branch. No passenger services run on the Tzqaltobo, Tqibuli and Tsachkhere lines, also on the Akhalkalaki line and the entirety of the Kakheti railway. On the Abkhazian railway, the Tqarcheli line is disused. This brings us to the railway as we know it today. Hello everyone, thank you for watching this video which I finally made. Next time I will maybe talk about the railway's rolling stock, but God knows when that'll come out. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and stay safe.